The fight week that is now upon us is unlike any fight week we've ever seen before. The unique circumstances we find ourselves in during these strange times call for unprecedented measures. UFC 249 goes down this Saturday, live from the ViStar Veterans Memorial Arena in Jacksonville, Florida. The arena is going to be vacant of any and all spectators. The few bodies that will be hanging around will be athletic commissioners, UFC employees, and the fighters themselves. The UFC's last event was down in Brazil with no audience, so the look and the vibe of having nobody in attendance is definitely going to be familiar to fans. But there's a very distinct difference between that card and UFC 249, as the comparison is a standard fight night card to the highest profile event of the year. The fact that Tony Ferguson and Justin Gaethje is going to take place under these highly unusual circumstances adds a whole other element of intrigue to an already very intriguing matchup. Never mind how this fight came to be. The past is the past. What's important now is that after the longest layoff between UFC events since 2006, we are now closing in on what just might be one of the most enjoyable events in UFC history. An absolute stacked card from beginning to end, topped off with a main event that's destined to be fireworks. As for the main event and how that thing shakes out, technically speaking, Ferguson is one of the most unconventional fighters you'll ever see. He carries big power in his hands and is also very accurate when it comes to boxing. He does a really good job of finding those holes in the guard and launching his fists straight through them. He's also known to threaten a takedown, only to unleash damaging spinning elbows. Never mind the fact that he's a 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu black belt under pioneer Eddie Bravo. The rolls, the entries, and the attacks Ferguson throws out of nowhere are very dangerous and very fun to watch. He has the type of grappling style that enables him to have a high volume of attacks, which makes him a huge offensive threat on the ground in all positions. It's no secret what Justin Gaethje is going to do when he enters the octagon. He's in the rare percentile of professional MMA fighters that has one intention and one intention only: to walk forward and throw hammers until he either knocks somebody out or gets knocked out himself. This style has served him very well throughout his career and is going to serve him especially well in this fight. While this way of fighting is extremely risky, the payoff is huge if it works out. As sharp as Ferguson is in all areas, he does get hit, and no man can afford to absorb too many punches from Justin Gaethje, especially in the first couple of rounds. Ferguson certainly isn't one to avoid a firefight. He's the type of fighter that tends to thrive in that chaos, which is what makes this matchup so compelling. Something in Justin Gaethje's game that tends to get overlooked, I find, is his leg kicks. It's a tool he doesn't use a whole lot, but when he does, they are highly effective. He's got these kicks that just slam to his opponents with a great deal of impact, and they usually come at the end of a barrage of punches and have a history of being very destructive. But for such a potent strike, it doesn't get used very often. But with Ferguson's history of knee issues, the leg kicks could very well be the difference maker in this fight. There is so much unknown associated with this event, in this fight in particular. Plus, there's no telling what obstacles that could come up between now and Saturday. Both fighters face the same unusual circumstances with their training and the fight itself, and there's no telling what kind of impact this is going to have on the outcome. Looking at this fight objectively though, and removing all outside factors, this is Ferguson's fight to lose. As dangerous as Gaethje is, Ferguson has the mental fortitude to keep his composure, stick to a game plan that keeps him out of trouble, and end up coming out on top. There are many other notable fights and storylines surrounding this card, COVID-19 circumstances aside, but something else that ought to get a bulk of the attention is the return of Dominick Cruz, whose last fight was in December of 2016. He managed to have an active 2016 with 3 fights after returning from a year-and-a-half layoff. That year-and-a-half layoff before 2016 started in 2014 when Cruz fought once. And before that 2014 fight, it was October 2011 since he last competed. The layoffs and the injuries that man has endured is hard to fathom. What's equally as hard to fathom is that despite the extended layoffs and the spells of inactivity, the Dominator is coming back and throwing himself right into the fire in a 5-round fight for the bantamweight title versus champion Henry Cejudo. As gifted and intelligent Cruz is technically in the sport of mixed martial arts, it's the mental fortitude that he possesses that has been the key to a lot of his past successes as UFC and WBC champion. But to say there's so much unknown associated with him in that fight would be a major understatement. Cejudo is coming off of pretty invasive surgery himself, and how he's affected physically remains to be seen. But just based on activity alone, the Olympian comes into this fight in an advantageous position by default. So I'm going to opt out of making a prediction on that one because at this point, given the situation, the outcome of any of these fights is really not what's important. What's important right now is that all of the fans out there who've been absolutely starving for our beloved MMA are about to be teed up with one of the most stacked events you could ever ask for. The fact that this Saturday we're going to get to sit back and truly disconnect like we all need so bad right now is going to be a godsend, and hopefully a sign of everything finally being on the road back to normalcy. Saturday night's the night, so it's just as well to sit back and soak it up in all its glory. UFC 249 is for the fans.